Welcome to the second part of this module dedicated to the first crisis of the Anthropocene. After having discussed how the health crisis emerged and its relationship with biodiversity, we are now going to see how the economic and financial crisis has evolved from this health crisis. The first point to note is that as the health crisis was developing in China and northern economies, we have seen a massive portfolio outflow from emerging markets towards the northern economies. This has taken the shape of a 83 billion of non-resident portfolios outflowing from emerging markets. To give you an idea, this 83 billions is 5 times what we had observed in the great financial crisis of 2008. At the same time, we have seen a reduction in oil prices. This is due to two dynamics. On the one hand, the demand side has been reducing because of the slowdown in production and mobility in northern economies. On the supply side, the OPEC Plus alliance failed to extend the agreement to cut production, leading to Saudi Arabia and Russia flooding the market. If demand decreases and supply increases, the price had to go down. So down that we actually even saw negative prices on the US market for oil. If oil prices go down and if emerging market see portfolio outflows, the nominal exchange rate is bound to depreciate. We have seen actually depreciation of up to 20% in South Africa, Brazil, Mexico. And on the other side, developed economies have seen an appreciation of their exchange rate. The first policy response to the health crisis was a lockdown in most of the northern economies. This lockdown has had different dynamics. On the one hand, it disrupted the supply chain, especially in non-manufacturing and services sector, but as well in manufacturing. And on the other hand, we have seen a reduction in demand, either in the form of consumption from households or investment for firms. This, of course, has led to rising unemployment. This reduction in demand and in supply has led to, of course, GDP reducing massively. Contrary to what happened in the great financial crisis, GDP has been degrowing at a massive scale across all regions in the world. So we have a more severe and more diffuse shock with respect to the great financial crisis of 2008. On the other hand, what we also see is that this reduction in GDP actually is long-lasting, and that the shape of the crisis is more likely to be L or U-shaped than the V with a quick recovery. The consequences for emerging and developing economies of this crisis are very important. On the one hand, the public sector has seen an increase in spending out of health, social protection, and recovery plan, and a reduction in income, either in the form of drop in tax revenues out of activity going down, or out of the revenues coming from royalties due to the oil prices going down. But as well, as a part of the recovery plan, most countries have implemented tax measures such as payment deferrals or accelerated tax return. The consequences for the public situation is that fiscal deficits are increasing, public debt is increasing as well, which will lead to further increase in debt services, and these dynamics will be worsened by the exchange rate movements in developing and emerging economies. The private sector is not saved either. We have observed supply and demand shock with falling revenues and remaining fixed costs. On top of it, you have to add economic uncertainty, either on the solution for the health crisis, but also on the policy responses to the economic crisis. Furthermore, the financial constraints due to the flight to quality and financial market being more tight leads to a drop in investment and at the same time an increasing debt level, which is accelerating the trends we already observed before the COVID-19 crisis. And the balance of payment situation is even worse. During the GFC, we had seen that FDI and remittances had dropped, but only with 1 year delay. In this crisis, we have seen that FDI and remittances have already started to fall. The length of the health crisis does imply that not only we have already seen a decrease in flows of remittances and FDI, but the reversal is not likely to happen very soon. The overall reduction in inflow for 2020 is of the amount of $700 billion compared to 2019 levels. This is twice the size of what we had observed in the case of the great financial crisis. And these economic and financial consequences have very strong social and societal consequences. For the first time in history, the Human Development Index could decline. And this is because we have seen reduction in all the three components of the Human Development Index. The health has deteriorated, income has reduced, and schooling or access to school have reduced as well out of the lockdowns. This shows that the COVID-19 crisis is really a magnifying glass for inequalities.